Craving the perfect holiday snack? Check out Farmer Bill's Biltong. Think beef jerky, but better. No sugar, no preservatives, just pure animal protein goodness. Crafted from premium grass-fed beef or bison and air-dried to perfection, Farmer Bill's Biltong is nutrient-packed, energy-dense, and perfect for an on-the-go treat or a standout snack for your next party. My favorite is the original bison, but the other flavors like the original beef, smokehouse, and spicy chili had me second-guessing that choice more than once. Visit FarmerBillsProvisions.com to grab a 1-pound slab or a variety pack and use code BIZBIT10 for 10% off. Farmer Bill's Biltong, don't be the 2-liter guy at this year's Christmas party. Welcome to the Business Bitcoinization Show, the show dedicated to helping you enrich your life and grow your business with Bitcoin, the hardest money on planet Earth. I'm your host, Josh Friedeman, and our guests today are two members of the Perth Heat executive team. The Perth Heat are a baseball team in the Australian Baseball League and the first team in world sport to operate on a Bitcoin standard. We're going to have Stephen Nelkovski, their CEO, and Patrick O'Sullivan, their Chief Bitcoin Officer, or CBO, on today's interview. But of course, before we get to the interview, we have this week's Bitcoin Meetup Spotlight, and we're going international for the first time, actually promoting the Perth Bitcoin Meetup. So the Perth Bitcoin Meetup gets together once a month to socialize, learn, and discuss the latest in the world of Bitcoin. They're all Bitcoin and no altcoins. So if you're in or traveling through West Australia and want to find the signal among the noise, join the Perth Bitcoin Meetup. You can contact them in their Telegram chat, which is listed in the show notes below. Now, we're going to get to our interview with Stephen and Patrick right after this. Business owners, unlock the benefits Bitcoin has to offer your business with the Bitcoin for Business Quick Start Guide. This 27-page guide highlights the 6 ways you can grow your business with Bitcoin. Check it out in the show notes. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Cheers, Josh. Great to be on.
Thanks so much for having us.
So I like to start off every single interview with a few questions to help us to get to know you a little bit better and give us some insight for our own lives. Are you ready for these?
Absolutely.
Let's go.
So Stephen, we'll start with you, and then Patrick, you follow up just so we can help listeners understand who's who early on. The first question is this: when and how did you first learn about Bitcoin?
I think we've all got some sort of similar story where you're at the Christmas table with family, and there's always the batshit crazy cousin that mentions Bitcoin, or and everyone's sitting there quietly thinking, "What is this? Is the cousin onto something? Should we be finding more out?" But no, look, it's been a journey in a couple of different ways. So there's been an intrigue about it for the best part of maybe 5 years, back to 2017, and watching it without being too close to it. And then in my position, looking at world sport trends and understanding as a business, what do I need to do to make sure Perth Heat remain competitive and at the cutting edge of technology and advancements in the near future. And for me, it just kept coming back to Bitcoin. And I was doing my research and understanding more about it. And then Patrick became a significant part of my journey in orange pilling me. And once I openly started discussing it with Patrick, it really did move quickly from there. He's been a wonderful teacher for myself, educator, listener, and that's really happened in the last 2 to 3 years.
Patrick, how about you?
I would say the same sort of story that you always hear. It's those touch points immediately happening sort of 2012, 2013 is when it came across the radar, and of course just completely wrote it off. As stupid, just had too many things going on, and I always say to this day, it's the dumbest decision I've ever made, the single most costly decision I've ever made to ignore those early signs. But just touch points throughout the media, and then through family and friends at the time. You hear people making great successes in certain areas, and you immediately write it off as a scam or something. And that was my the single biggest mistake I've ever made.
So the next question is what's an insight or fact about Bitcoin that you wish that everyone understood?
Ooh, there's so many. Maybe even just simply that you don't need. What's Bitcoin at today? US dollar value $21,000, somewhere around there. That you don't need $21,000 to purchase Bitcoin, and that it's not a scam. People really need to take that word and that association away from Bitcoin. The quicker that happens, the better as well.
Nice. I would say I'm going to go a little bit off the radar here and tailor it more towards maxis, just because the Bitcoin maxis are a lot of the times making the arguments that will eventually trickle down into the normie world. I wish that individuals knew not about Bitcoin, but about what we're trying to do with Bitcoin. the community and the network is who we're actually fighting, and what the history of just the monetary system in general is, and how essentially a distributed ledger technology overtook the US dollar. And from there, that's what we're fighting, rather than fighting the US dollar or the Fed. I think it's always interesting that Bitcoiners will be so distrustful of everything coming out of the government, but they'll believe the one thing that the government says about who controls the global reserve asset. So I wish if we could do just that little bit more, just a little bit more research into the global monetary network, we could see who we're actually fighting. And it's also a bit of hopium that, if a distributed ledger technology has already won, one that is more open source and that is more open and permissionless is going to win out again because it's just simply more efficient.
So this third question is simply this: what is the Bitcoin resource that you most recommend to other people?
In terms of resource, if you got a couple of $100, just buying some Bitcoin and learning about it in that sense, and understanding how to utilize it, how to use it, and just starting that way. I know that doesn't directly answer the question, but it's just getting people onto the first base in some ways and understanding Bitcoin.
Yeah, sweet. I would say that if it's just normal people that we come across, the obvious one is the Bitcoin Standard. That's probably the easiest to digest for people. I would say my favorite one to recommend, and the thing that probably had the biggest impact on my understanding of Bitcoin, is GG's What Bitcoin is Time. I love recommending that one. It's a fantastic read. And it allows you to quickly and easily see, with a little bit of work, it allows you to easily see what the true innovation is and why the system becomes trustless.
So the last two questions are not Bitcoin specific. The first one, and this is question number 4, is beyond Bitcoin, what's a resource or an idea that's been helpful to you or your business recently?
You sent some of these questions through prior to our chat, and I thought, what's been helping me recently? And it was actually my birthday on the weekend, and I got a box of Lego. And it's surprising just how much Lego is helping me. Sitting at a table with my son, who's 3 years old, and building things, and just taking myself away from the business at the moment is the best tool I've got. Just sitting at a table with my son and playing with some Lego blocks and building cities. It's been very, very good for me.
Patrick, you're going to have a hard time topping that. What's yours?
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think I'm going to top that. I will say, because like Steve has mentioned there, it has been so much Bitcoin around the office and the space that it's hard to separate that from everything that's been going on. But probably the biggest change in terms of ideas that I have seen, and it's nice to see it in others inside the community, inside the organization, has just been a shift in time preference, right? We talk about it all the time as Bitcoiners, but to see it actually come to the surface at an organizational level, especially as we've seen, this recent downturn in Bitcoin. If you are not fully, if you don't have your conviction up, you don't have your education up, it can be a daunting period for newcomers. And it's been awesome to see that, you start to see the education sort of actually kicking in, and that low time preference around everybody, around the organization, of thinking, this is none of this stuff actually affects what we're doing. We're just building in this time. And it's been game changing to the group to be able to build from a point of strength.
And now we have our final, what we call arbitrary but insightful question, and it's this: as a general life principle, is it better to ask why or why not?
Why not? Why can't we do this? Let's do it.
Yeah, I would second that. I would say why not? Just opens you up to so many different possibilities, and that's how we're stumbling forward. And nothing more than what we're doing with the organization is going to. I think you're going to see in this conversation. Hopefully, you're going to see that that's pretty much the organizational model is why not. So I would say why not for sure.
Perfect. Meet Linkster, your premier Bitcoin-focused advisor. Linkster caters to businesses, institutions, family offices, and high net worth individuals. They merge your unique financial goals and needs with Linkster's Bitcoin expertise to craft your own sustainable plan to preserve and grow the value of your hard-earned profits and retained earnings. At Linkster, it's not just advice, it's tailored execution. Connect directly with the founder by visiting linkster.com. That's LYNCSTER.com. Linkster. Secure your future with Bitcoin. Today's episode of Business Bitcoinization is proudly brought to you by Velis Commerce, where the future of business technology meets Bitcoin. As we journey through the era of Bitcoin and its transformational impact on businesses, there's one name that stands out: Velis Commerce. Whether you're looking to build a cutting-edge website, a seamless mobile app, or custom software, Velis is your go-to team. They've been diving deep into the world of Bitcoin since 2014, making them one of the most experienced groups for integrating Bitcoin and Lightning payments into a variety of digital platforms. But here's what truly sets them apart. Velis Commerce doesn't just build. They bring a wealth of knowledge to ensure your project success from day one. Their team understands the nuances of Bitcoin, ensuring that your business stays ahead of the curve. And for all business Bitcoinization listeners out there, Velis Commerce is offering a free consultation to kickstart your project the right way. So if you're ready to future-proof your business in the coming age of hyper-Bitcoinization, head over to veliscommerce.com or reach out on Twitter at veliscommerce. Let's make sure your business thrives in the Bitcoin era. Well, gentlemen, we're here today to talk about the Perth Heat and talk about the first team in world sport to operate on a Bitcoin standard. First question, and I'm not sure the best person to toss this to, so I'll let you two decide, but tell us a little bit about the Perth Heat, and then also, what does it mean for Perth Heat to operate on a Bitcoin standard?
Well, it means a lot, and it's evolving every day, and what we're doing today will be different in 6 months' time, and what we've done in the previous 6 months is probably what we didn't think would be our initial introduction to operating on a Bitcoin standard. So, naturally, we live in a city where very few people operate on a Bitcoin standard. So there's a transition there in terms of how we're structuring the business, and also the opportunities that are coming globally from being the first team in the world to operate on Bitcoin standards. So, in some ways, it's quite complex, but it's also pretty simple as well. Every aspect of the business that we can operate on through Bitcoin or on the Bitcoin standard, we are doing that. But there's also a part of the business at the moment which is relying on fiat, and that will be there for us until the rest of the world catches up in some ways, or we have global adoption of enough businesses that we can deal with without companies dealing with fiat. So continually evolving every day in terms of how we process payments, how we look at payments, and how we continue to work with staff members, but also suppliers, our members, our players, etc., etc. So, really exciting that it continues to move as quickly as it does, and there's no day like yesterday, and there'll be no day like today. It's an incredibly exciting industry to be involved with.
And Patrick, I want to get to you in just a second, but Stephen, I want to toss it back to you real quick. Could you tell us a little bit about how long you've been involved with the Perth Heat? Did you come to the team and have an intention of bringing Bitcoin to the team, or is this something that you've learned along the way after already being the CEO of the company?
No, so when I took the position, which was almost 4 years ago, it certainly wasn't in my master plan that I gave to the board of directors in terms of where we'll be in 2022. So it's something that's continually come about, and look, probably escalated during COVID, and the difficulties as an organisation we had during the 2 years, and assessing where we needed to be in 2 years' time, or 3 years' time, or 5 or 10 years' time. Everything for me kept coming back to operating on a Bitcoin standard. So over the last 2 years, it is really where it's sped up.
So, Patrick, you're the Chief Bitcoin Officer. Kind of curious, how did you, I'm assuming you're American based off of your accent, how did you get mixed up with an Aussie baseball team, and what does it look like to be the Chief Bitcoin Officer for the team?
Well, the Chief Bitcoin Officer is a fantastic job, I will say that. And I imagine, like you, when you speak to so many different people in Bitcoin, in the business world, these things start to come together, and there will be many more like me, right? This Chief Bitcoin Officer idea, in that this is how payments in the future are going to be made. There are such a fast-moving industry that you almost need someone that has that ability, or has the intent or the will to go out there and learn this stuff and try and stay ahead of things, and then just communicate that back down to an audience that simply doesn't have the amount of time or the energy required to learn this stuff. So it's really, the role is really about digesting the necessary information, and which department that's going to go to, and how that's going to affect the business overall, and doing it in bite-sized, easy to understand little chunks, and so that we can become a better organization. So it's really a translator from what's going on in the Bitcoin space. What can we action now? How is that going to affect the business, 90 days from now, 180 days from now, and going on into the future. So that's the original role. Very early on, it was about, it's essentially orange pilling the company, right? And I think that's how every Chief Bitcoin Officer is going to have to start now. You're going to have to have someone inside of the organization. In this case, it was Steve, who had an idea and realized that, just through our conversations, had realized, well, if it's better for him as an individual, it's going to be better for the organization, because an organization is simply a group of individuals who are pointing at a common goal. And so we quickly realized that this was an opportunity where we could make some moves, and the flexibility inside of the organization, just the way that it's structured, the board that we have, the owners that are involved, they were all very open to that idea. So at the beginning, it was orange pilling, lots and lots of orange pilling. And I'm, much like Bitcoiners, the longer that you stay in the game, you start to, well, it sort of ebbs and flows, right? Sometimes you're just like, I'm not going to orange pill anybody else. I just can't take it anymore. I've already had that conversation 15,000 times. Other people really like it and they thrive on it. And I'm constantly looking for holes in my argument because I have a significant investment in my argument, right? Like, the chips are on the table. When it comes to Bitcoiners, you're putting your money where your mouth is. And oftentimes, especially over time, it becomes quite a bit of savings that you have accumulated, and you don't want to be wrong. So I'm constantly looking for those things. So that was my initial involvement, was just that orange pilling process. And again, it's about coming up with small, little tiny wins that people can understand. You can make it easy, and then you can immediately show them, right? You don't want to show that. You don't want to, not that it's a surprise to anyone, but you don't want to go into the first board meeting and say, listen, you can be a sovereign individual, and we're not going to have any reliance on anyone else for the rest of the world. No one can steal the energy savings that we've accumulated. Like, we're going to save the world. That isn't probably the way. You have to tailor it to every conversation. Yeah. So the role of the Bitcoin officer is that, it's been exciting so far.
So I'm sort of curious, once again, Patrick, what is like a project that's on the horizon beyond orange pilling that you're excited about, connected to your job as a CBO?
Oh man, it would take a significant number of shows just to get through the possibilities or the things that are down the pipe, which is exactly what we've tried to do as an organization. There's so much happening right now in the Bitcoin space. So much on the cards, and we have put our hand up, and we have done this very specifically. This is part of the strategy to say to companies in the space, we have now, because we are the first sports organization in the world to go on a Bitcoin standard, we are very open to any ideas that are in the space, because we want to lead from the front. We see it as we want to provide a mirror to the network to say, this is the best that we can offer small businesses. This is what we can do. These are the necessary steps. This is the applications that you can use. These are the companies that you can use to get there. So it's been incredibly exciting. Like the value for value podcasting that is happening right now at the moment, that is not going to stay in the podcast world, right? That is going to transfer to other areas of media. And it's just very, very exciting to be a part of. That's probably the biggest thing that I've seen in terms of a shift in just how you need to think about how things are going to be funded in the future. How what value is in the future will come down to, what is someone willing to exchange for? No longer do you have to go through a central entity in order to disperse that value. And just that singular idea, so many things, so many projects are being built in the background with a fantastic group that we have accumulated, that we have brought together to help us bring this thing to life. And we really are, like, being on the inside, we're seeing sort of 6 months out what is happening or what people are working on, and just trying to get that into action as soon as possible, because we know, number one, we have a reliable test audience where we can try these things out. We can be experimental, but we're not just going to shove it on the community without any education, right? That's a huge component of it right now for us, is just educating everyone, especially inside of the organization. Listen, like Steve said before, the processes that we're going through now, they are not going to be the same in 30 days. They're not going to be the same in 60 days. These things are going to be constantly evolving, and we are looking for the winners, and we're going to try and lean into those heavily. But that's really the job is excitement, because we are seeing things on the front line, whether it's payments, whether it's how to deal with taxes, whether it's how to deal with just payment solutions to the players or to the staff, or however it is, or just taking on the corporate treasury of now, how does it change our planning when we go into a season and we have Bitcoin on the balance sheet, or Bitcoin as the reserve asset inside the company? How does that change for 2023, the 2025 season? All of these things going forward, it makes a really big difference. So I would say there's a ton of exciting things on the horizon.
So Steve, I'm curious, when it comes to kind of your vision for the organization, first of all, what was the vision that you cast for people within the organization, whether it's the board, the players, the fans? And what were some of those conversations you had early on? Was it an easy transition to a Bitcoin standard, or was it something that you really had to fight uphill to win approval for?
I know the conversations have been varied. We've tampered with our logo. If you look at it, there's the Bitcoin logo inside the baseball. We're the most successful baseball team in Australia. Your logo is a strong part of your history. I've had championship players question what we're doing, and needing to explain to them the process and the pathway, and that It may not be today that it all comes together. It may take a couple of years for them to understand the significance of the move that the organisation has made, but you've got to see it through. Obviously, conversations with fans that have been, again, different because there's been, in some ways, confusion. Can they come to the ballpark and shop at concession stands if they don't have Bitcoin? Well, we still accept fiat. There's obviously then the conversations with the players. And the one we had regularly at the start was, what happens if the price goes down and the volatility of Bitcoin? How will that affect my paycheck? So needing to speak to them and educate them through that process. Because the landscape is changing so quickly, what we presented to the board has already changed what we're thinking moving forward. So there's continual updates with the board in terms of how we're continuing to transition and what we're going to be doing. So across different stakeholders, different conversations, but all of them I would think are positive. Even those ones in regards to logo, when you sit down and you explain the vision and you explain the process and what this will mean for the organisation further down the line, they accept it and they understand it and happy to support. So it's great in that sense. Probably where it has been a little bit difficult was the fact that in the end the Australian season got shut down after we made the announcement. So a lot of the plans we had in terms of the education and the explanation of what we're doing, we weren't able to roll out. So there was this global announcement which reached ridiculous numbers worldwide, yet we didn't have our season to roll out the education plans that we had hoped for. So in that sense, probably a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of how we would have liked to have, I guess, marketed it in some sense and given some more context to what it means and how it works and having more people in the stadium and then understanding, okay, yes, I can still come in and buy a hot dog with fiat, or there is the option of Bitcoin. Okay, so how does, if they're a normie, okay, how does Bitcoin work? And then even being able to explain to them if they're a small business owner about the Lightning Network and how that money will be deposited into your wallet instantly, or there won't be any fees, et cetera, and then going, okay, so just on that very simple transaction process alone, this is really good for a small business because I'm now no longer waiting 4 days for the money to come through a point of sale system and I'm not losing 3%. Wow, I love it. Or if you're speaking to a small business that has any sort of transaction internationally about how the payments can be made via Bitcoin, without having to go through SWIFT codes and all the runaround of operating through the legacy system, and them enjoying the fact that it's instant. When you can start to have those conversations because they're actually in the ballpark and experiencing it, I think will help the education incredibly.
I'm sort of curious, when you are talking to people down the line, 5, 10, 15 years out, what's the vision that you're casting for the future of the team because of the Bitcoin standard that you're operating on? What does that make possible for your organization in the future?
Oof. As Patrick said, how many hours do we have to go through this? The whole landscape of sport will change. The Lightning Network and sending sats through broadcast will completely revolutionise how players are paid or how they're valued. So there's so much in this space that will change. Just like any other industry has been disrupted, really. So we've got an announcement to make, and unfortunately I can't say too much about it during this chat in the next few days in terms of the Lightning Network and just how bullish it will be in terms of the fan experience inside the ballpark, but also if you're sitting on your sofa in the United States and watching one of our games. So it's pretty cool what we've got planned to happen. But this is also a space that is changing so rapidly, and it's hard to predict what the future will be and how much the advancements in technology will be in 15 years' time. Bitcoin is 13 years old, and look how much it's matured over that short period of time. How much more will it mature in the next decade, and what will be sitting, in terms of layers underneath the blockchain as well, or the Lightning Network. So, it's moving fast. To probably predict 15 years is pretty hard. We're trying to keep up, I think, with the next 15 days in some ways, Patrick.
So, Patrick, I'm kind of curious to piggyback off of that. Maybe what are some of the conversations that you've had, especially with the players and with the fans, about the potential of Bitcoin in the organization?
Yeah, I would say it's easy enough. You don't have to complicate it too much. With the simple idea is that Bitcoin allows the organization to operate from a point of strength, projecting out into the future. Right? It is the thing that we can rely on, the surest thing that there will be no changes to. And from that bedrock, from that foundation, it allows us to be a better baseball team. And essentially, what the players are interested in, they're interested in how does this make me a better baseball player. And now that's a long conversation that we can have. It's really simple to understand, right? The gist of it is athletes understand low time preference inherently, right? You have to do the work if you're an athlete. If you want to hit the baseball, you got to hit 10,000 baseballs. No one can hit the baseballs for you. You know if you hit those baseballs, and no one can help you along the way, and no one can cheat you out of that practice time. So they understand the idea that, okay, yes, I understand that low time preference makes a difference. The fans understand that, well, how does this make us a better baseball team? Well, now the baseball players, they don't have to spend time, whether that is in the fiat normie world of going to get banking accounts when they arrive. They can instantly get paid. They can instantly be signed up to get access to the funds that they deserve, and they can be on the field getting better and practicing and doing all those things better. It doesn't matter so much from a concession side or the fact that they can pay in Bitcoin. It's about making the team better. So the explanations to the players is this is how it's going to make you more effective, and this will allow you to focus more on your job, which is the whole reason that you get paid, right? That's why you receive value. That's why you receive energy reserves, is because of what you are providing. What you're providing is being a baseball player. Now, why is a baseball player valuable? It goes into a much deeper conversation about why that actually is. And it's interesting to think about. And that's what's going to change around sports is now you will be forced to answer that question. Why is professional sports valued at all? Why do people go and watch the thing? Is it just to turn their minds off for a few minutes or for a few hours every weekend? Our argument is that it's not, and that it actually does serve a purpose, or it wouldn't exist. And that purpose is deep, meaningful, and impactful. And it has been distorted over time through the fiat world. And we have seen sports change. You've seen the attitudes around players change, around teams, and that essence of why sports exist has been lost. So for players, it's one thing. For fans, this is going to make us a better team. It's going to allow us to attract a lot more talent, right? One of the main things when we were orange pilling the board was just the revelation to them that we are a small organization, right? This is not the New York Yankees. This is sub 100 employees at peak period. And that means that we don't have access to all of the best and brightest minds in the world. But Bitcoin allows us to do that because it is an open source network. And whatever changes are happening that someone in El Salvador is making to make payments that little bit quicker, or to make storing your seed phrase a little bit better, all of those things we're just sucking up. Like we're not doing any extra work. We're just plugging into the network and allowing the brightest minds around the world, because there are incentives, there are opportunities, all of these things align to make Bitcoin a very powerful siren song for people around the world to work on and contribute to. We're just simply plugging into that. So if we can be a better organization, and that leads to more wins on the field and allows the fan a better experience on the day, because we can get rid of some of the fiat aspects of sports, then they are all in.
I'm sort of curious, could you talk a little bit more about fiat distortion? That's something that maybe if you've been in Bitcoin for a while, that phrase computes with you a little bit, but how has that affected sports in particular?
It's affected everything. Like the athletes, right? You have a very limited window in order to earn or to get return on the value that you have put in, right? The work that you have put on to get really good, there's a very small window and it's very compressed, and you're trying to maximize that as quick as you can. And the way that you maximize that is you do a lot of showboaty things, and you make a lot of noise, and you maybe aren't thinking, why am I valuable as a sportsman? You're thinking, how can I extract as much value from the system as I can, because I need that value, because even though it's not conscious in your mind, it's being sucked away from me every chance I get. I need to accumulate this massive bag, rather than how do I give back, or the value to the people that come and watch, to the people that contribute, to the people that give their energy to me, to the organization, to be able to put my skills on display. How do I enrich that, rather than how do I attract the next sponsor dollar by wearing neon socks, or by getting a face tattoo, or whatever it might be around sports. The other thing is that just think about this. This is often a very weird thing. You think about the NFL in the U.S. In the NFL, the game is, say, average of 3 hours and 30 minutes long. You spend an hour watching ads. You spend an hour watching ads. If you take the federal minimum wage of $10 an hour for the 17 million people that are average watching that broadcast, 17 million people waste an hour at $10 an hour. You start to lose quite a bit of GDP over the course of a 272 game season, right? There's a lot of productivity that is lost simply to watching ads that aren't targeted anyway, that do you no good anyway. How can that shift? And back to that value for value model, how much is it actually worth to the people that are watching? We don't know. We don't know how much an athlete is actually worth because they don't have access to the market. They don't have access to the people that are actually paying them because it's going through a proxy, which is the organization. So it's about determining, number one, what is the true value for what athletes bring or what sports bring versus what is the advertised revenue that comes off of that, and what is the time leech, the attention leech, right? If the product is free, you're the product, and that is exactly what is happening. The people understand that sports draw people in because of all of the non-fiat reasons, right? Because it does put on display in a very time poor way. It shows you what hard work, what determination, what teamwork, what grit, what resilience does. And you're supposed to take those ideas and you're supposed to use them in your own life, right? You're supposed to get inspired by what absolute determination and dedication to perfecting your craft does. And that has been siphoned off by people who go, hey, I want to be associated with that. Well, you want to be associated with that, but you don't actually produce that. The person that's actually producing that is the one that is providing the value, and that is where the reward should be. And in a capitalistic society where the best and the brightest rise to the top through competition, it is being siphoned away by stuff that is just acting on that as a proxy. And if you think about just in the amount of time that is wasted on advertisements and what you could be doing with that time, there is value in there. You just don't know that you're paying for it, and you are, and everyone is doing it.
So 2 more questions, one for each of you. Steve, first of all, could you give business owners who are listening to this podcast right now maybe a couple thoughts now that you've moved to a Bitcoin standard? Yeah, I know you said you're still using fiat for some things, but could you just give some recommendations or thoughts on what business owners might need to think about in order to get toward a Bitcoin standard or begin using Bitcoin in their business?
Don't overthink it. The longer you sit on the couch thinking whether I should or shouldn't won't help. The best advice I could give is start, and just start somewhere. It doesn't mean changing your whole business model, but just open the first page and start understanding Bitcoin and how it can improve your business. It doesn't mean operating on a Bitcoin standard from day one, but until you're brave enough to make that change, you're getting left at the station. There is a lot to learn. And you don't need to know it all to start somehow. It was in some ways our own self-trepidation as to what took us so long to get started, thinking, have we covered everything? Do we know this? Do we know that? Should we be doing this? If we kept asking ourselves those questions, we wouldn't have made the move on November 17, 2021. So I guess if you're a business owner, and maybe it goes back to even in the initial 5 questions as you had, just purchase a little bit of Bitcoin and start playing around with it in some ways. Be prepared to, I don't know, in some ways, lose $100, whatever it may be, just to understand how transactions work and how to store it, et cetera, et cetera. Once you've got the basic principles around that, then and look at ways that how you can introduce it to your business. And understanding that every business is a little bit different, But if you are a small business and you are using a point of sale system and you're waiting 4 days for that money to reach your account and you are losing 3%, then calculate how much better your business can be year on year by reducing that 3% down to either 0% or even 1% of transaction fees. And then once you start to see the savings, you'll start to understand I should be doing this because this is better for my business. Just on that simple practice alone. The important thing is don't be afraid that you don't know it all. You're not expected to, or you're not going to be able to know it all. Michael Saylor continues to advance himself and improve himself. With MicroStrategy and what they do, they're evolving. And in some ways, they're flag bearer, of organisations, obviously at a very high scale. But do they continue to tweak and make adjustments? Absolutely. So, what you necessarily thought at the start will continue to evolve, but just be brave enough to put your foot where others aren't.
And Patrick, for you, I would love to hear how people who are listening to this podcast can potentially get some Perth Heat paraphernalia, some merchandise, things like that. I love what it looks like. I wouldn't be the guy to wear a Bitcoin shirt, but Perth Heat that has a Bitcoin logo but looks really well designed, I would be interested in something like that. So could you share with people where they can go to get some merch? Maybe any final thoughts? Then we'll pass it off to Steve for his final thoughts as well.
Yeah, easiest spot to find the merch. You just Google Perth Heat Bitcoin. You'll see the site. You can get all the hats, the jerseys, which is actually, timed it perfectly with this podcast because we're actually running a competition for the network. Again, trying to reach out to reflect exactly what Bitcoiners want from a Bitcoin Standard company, because we know so many eyeballs are on the organization, so many eyeballs are on the company to see whether or not this is actually going to work out. We want to represent what the network wants to project. So there's a competition right now to design the Bitcoin jerseys. So if you have any design skills, even if you don't, I know I don't, but I've put in my design. I like the Bitcoin wizard back from the Reddit days. It can be as simple as just a hand-drawn thing, but hopefully it becomes a statement for what Bitcoin represents, both on and off the field. And those are available on the website. You can find all that stuff. And the parting words would be, I would echo what Steve said, especially to small business owners. Just get involved. It's so easy now, even just for taking payments, right? Taking payments used to be this whole big problem. You had to understand quite a bit about Bitcoin just to wrap your head around it. And nowadays, if you can sign up for an email, you can sign up and start receiving payments over the Lightning Network, and you can start to accumulate that Bitcoin. You don't have to buy it, right? Just put a sign up, see if it gets any traction, and you can instantly be accepting it. And once you do, that will give you the motivation to start thinking a little bit more about how this can actually impact every single aspect of the business. And then, you make your own decision. Every company is going to have its own, intricacies about how they're going to move forward. But I think just getting that little bit and start accepting it and start playing around with it, and you're going to see pretty quickly that there are very few impediments to taking Bitcoin payments. And it's getting easier and easier by the day.
And then, Steve, you've given us some final thoughts already, but maybe anything else you want to share before we close out, plus the best way for us as Bitcoiners to support you as a Bitcoin Standard team.
Yeah, well, look, firstly, we're awfully grateful for the incredible support we've had from the community, from the network over the last 8 months or so. So, we're very appreciative of that. How can you support? All the usual methods by jumping online, purchasing merchandise, purchasing memberships if you're in Australia, coming to games, at the ballpark, looking at some of the responses we've had. Nationally, we think we'll get quite a few Bitcoiners coming from different parts of Australia to our ballpark to support us, which is awesome. Like our socials, get involved. We'd love to see more entries coming through for our jersey competition. Come back to us with feedback. We think we're a representation of the network, so we're open to suggestions on what the community would like to see from us. It's not necessarily what Patrick and I think is best for the Perth Heat, but we're also open to other Bitcoiners saying, "Well, have you thought of this, or could this potentially be part of the journey as well?" So we're certainly open to suggestions. But jump online, perthheat.com.au. There's a tab at the top which is Bitcoin, and there's a couple of obviously different pages from there which lead you to different parts of the organisation in terms of what we're doing with Bitcoin. And stay tuned. We've got some pretty exciting announcements in the coming months with what we'll do, and we'd certainly love to know more from what the community would like to see from us as well. It's important that we do provide that representation of the Bitcoin community in terms of what we're doing on the field and also away from winning championships.
All right. Well, thank you so much for explaining to us a little bit about what you're doing at Perth Heat. Looking forward to keeping up with what you're doing in the coming days. Really appreciate your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Our pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, Josh.
Cheers.
All right, friends, it's a wrap. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Business Bitcoinization Show. If you want to reach out, our email is info@bizbitshow.com. Also, if you haven't done so yet, go ahead and scroll on down to the show notes. There you'll find ways to connect with me and our guest, as well as our excellent sponsors who can help you succeed in your life and in your business. Keep building, keep growing, and until next time, keep living and leading well. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, thank you. If you want to take a further step in your support for the show, you can help us grow by listening on Fountain, a value-for-value podcast app on iOS or Android. If you hear something you like that you disagree with or anything else, you can share it by sending some sats and adding a comment with your thoughts. Some of you have already done this, and I appreciate it. I'm going to begin reading your boosts on upcoming episodes, so if you have some insight or value to add, let the people know. Getting started with Fountain is easy. You can add Bitcoin to your Fountain wallet by using your fiat accounts or any Lightning wallet. And one of my favorite features is that once you're using the app, you can earn sats just by listening on Fountain. Check out the link in the show notes to get started with Fountain today.